The night was bitter, the kind of cold that stung your skin and numbed your fingers even beneath gloves. John Carter, a single father in his late 30s, sat at the edge of a worn-out park bench, clutching a faded green blanket around his shoulders. Beside him, in an old stroller, slept his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, bundled in layers of thrift store sweaters and a tiny pink hat that had seen better days. John hadn't always lived like this. Just 2 years ago, he had a decent job at a local garage, a modest apartment, and dreams of sending Emma to a good school. But life had unraveled in ways he never expected. His wife, Amy, died suddenly in a car accident, leaving him broken and lost. Grief consumed him, and when the bills piled up, he lost his job, then the apartment. Since then, every day was a battle to survive, and every night, a prayer for hope. That evening, as he walked Emma through the dark streets in search of shelter, a soft sob caught his attention near the train station. Beneath the flickering light stood a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, shivering violently. Her coat was thin, barely clinging to her small frame, and her shoes were soaked. She had no suitcase, just a worn handbag clutched tight to her chest. John could tell instantly, she was alone and scared. He paused, glancing down at Emma, who was now stirring in the stroller. She still had the blanket wrapped around her. Without thinking much of it, John stepped toward the woman. "Miss, are you all right?" he asked gently. She looked up, startled, tears staining her cheeks. "I missed the last bus. My phone's dead, and I don't know anyone here." John didn't hesitate. He pulled the only other blanket he had, the one he usually slept under, off his shoulders and handed it to her. "Here. You look colder than me." Her eyes widened. "I can't." "You can. And you will," he said with a smile. "My daughter's warm for now, and that's what matters." The woman took it with trembling hands. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." John nodded and moved along, pushing Emma toward the church steps where they sometimes slept under the eaves. He didn't think much of it afterward. Just one of many small kindnesses he'd offered strangers through the years. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that the young woman he helped wasn't just a lost traveler. Her name was Claire Monroe. She was the daughter of Richard Monroe, CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. Claire had left the house after a family argument and tried to prove she could handle herself. That cold night taught her more than she ever expected. The next day, Claire tracked John down. She hadn't forgotten his face, or Emma's gentle smile. She found them in a soup kitchen, where John volunteered when he could, helping in exchange for meals. Claire didn't say who she was at first. She simply thanked him again and brought them warm clothes, food, and offered to buy them a motel room for a few nights. John hesitated, pride getting in the way, but Emma's pleading eyes convinced him. Over the next week, Claire visited daily. She asked questions, listened to their story, and slowly revealed her own. When she finally told John who her father was, he was speechless. A week later, Richard Monroe himself arrived. A tall man with silver hair and eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, he introduced himself, shook John's hand, and said, "My daughter tells me you gave her warmth when she had nothing. I'd like to return the favor." John didn't expect what came next. Richard offered him a job, not just any job, but a role managing logistics for one of his new startup branches. He even arranged housing for John and Emma, enrollment in school, and counseling to help them heal from the trauma they had endured. It wasn't charity. Richard saw in John a man of character, of selflessness in the face of suffering. A man who had raised a kind daughter despite losing everything. And most of all, someone who reminded him what humanity looked like. Months passed, and John began to rebuild his life. Emma thrived in school, smiling more, laughing again. John worked with purpose, even saving to someday start his own shop again. Claire remained a close friend, checking in often, and occasionally bringing John's favorite coffee on early mornings. One winter evening, John stood on his new porch, watching the snow fall gently over the yard where Emma built a snowman. Claire sat beside him, bundled in a coat far warmer than the one from that night. She looked at him and said, "You didn't just give me your blanket, John. You gave me perspective, and faith in people again." He smiled, eyes misty. "And you gave me back my life."